Hi, this is Becky DeGrossa with New Generation Practices. You can find me online at newgenerationpractices.com. I am a marketing coach for therapists in private practice, and I want to welcome you to the Clarify Your Private Practice Niche course. In today's market, therapists who have a specialty or a niche, as it's also called, are able to grow their practices much easier than therapists who are either generalists or those that specialize in 3 to 4 different issues. The purpose of this course is to help you really get that the importance of a niche is real, and it's not just something that all these coaches have made up. In this course, you'll learn what a niche is exactly and what it isn't, and also how to define one for your practice. We'll use a certain method for determining several niche options for your practice. This method will take into account your skills, your experience, and your passions. We'll identify several different options so that you can then take those into the next step. In that next step, I'll show you how I assess both the demand for a certain niche in a market and the competition for that niche in that local market. If you look at both the demand and the competition, then you'll be sure that whatever you choose will give you the most chance of success. And finally, as part of this course, you'll discover a great resource for finding therapy niches that are paying off well for other practitioners, and you'll also get some really good ideas about how to make your niche work for you when you see how they're making theirs work for them. Let's get started with the course. Lesson 1, Introduction. Does the idea of creating a niche scare you? If you're like many therapists, you may feel afraid to choose a specialty, or a niche, as it's called, for your practice. Some therapists suffer from what I call the pigeonhole fear. They're afraid that they'll get known as something like the depression therapist or the parenting coach and not get referrals for anything else. In actuality, this rarely happens. The bigger challenge that you'll have when you choose a niche is not turning down cases that don't fit into your niche. You'll still have plenty of work outside your niche, trust me. Another reason that therapists are sometimes afraid of creating a niche is that they're afraid they're going to get bored. You probably are not going to get bored. And the reason for that is, even if you have a narrow niche, the people who walk in your office are multifaceted. We all are. Someone may come to you initially because they're going through a divorce, let's say, and need help coping with that. But if you work with them well, they'll stay with you to work on some single parenting issues later on, maybe depression or anxiety, or maybe entering the dating world. Another reason that therapists are often afraid to niche is that they are afraid if they have one narrow niche, one narrow specialty for their practice, they'll have all their eggs in one basket, and they just won't be able to make it work financially. The truth is that you won't have to worry about your financial situation if you niche and then you market well. If you do, you'll attract so many clients that your practice will grow, and you just won't have to worry about it. And finally, I've had many therapists tell me, well, I just don't feel like I'm really that skilled. I don't really have a specialty. Or I don't really have enough passion just around one area in order to choose that as a niche. If this is the case for you, what I would do is I would simply pick something that you like pretty well, and I would go for it. If you do that, you'll learn how to establish a niche and you'll learn how to market well, and then you can decide what you want to do later. You can add another niche later, but you really need to choose something and get started. When it comes to the idea of choosing a niche, you may feel one or all of those fears that I talked about. So let's talk about the reasons for moving beyond the fears. The first reason for moving beyond the fear of niching is that today's world requires us to niche. People want exactly what they want, and they really don't want to wade through a bunch of things that don't fit to get exactly what they want. This trend has been happening for quite a long time, and we'll see some examples on the following pages. As an industry, we are way behind the curve. One example of the niche trend that I'll talk about is dating sites, of all things. When dating sites first appeared on the scene, just like therapy practices, they were all very general, meant to be one size fits all. Come here, you'll find anything you want. And that's how a lot of therapy practices are today. So in the dating world, the largest sites, since they've been there the longest, are sites like Match.com and Yahoo Personals and that kind of thing, Plenty of Fish. Today, though, the sites that are growing the fastest and those that are really taking market share from the big guys are the niche sites. And these are sites that are like gay.com for the homosexual population, sites that target racial populations and religious populations like Black People Meet, Black Singles, J-Date, J stands for Jewish, Christian Mingle, and Christian Cafe. All of these sites are really growing, as you can see in that pie chart on the right, and they're taking market share. And the reason for this is that the folks who come to these sites, they know that they're going to find people like them. They know they don't have to sort through and wade through a whole bunch of stuff to find what they want. They can find people like them that they have more in common with. And also the content on these sites are targeted to the issues, the cultural values, whatever, of these populations. This is really what niching is all about, and this is why these sites are growing. Another example of the power of niching is in the area of food. Specialty stores there are growing fastest as well, as opposed to general supermarkets and that type of thing. You have Whole Foods, big success story, organic food. Trader Joe's, they're growing really fast. You have candy stores just dedicated to candy, and some of them are even, this is chocolate.com is one of them, but there are even retro candy stores and that kind of thing. I'm sure you've seen those. There are stores popping up all over dedicated to cheese and wine and bread stores. These are just some of the examples. Another example is in the area of shoes. There are stores that are dedicated to walking shoes, to running shoes, to corrective shoes, to small shoes. There's actually a website that I found called petitefeet.com, and they sell shoes for women who have really small feet and they don't want to wear little kids' shoes. And so they make small shoes and they sell them. These are just more examples of niching, and all of these companies are growing much faster than general shoe stores are growing. Here's another example. It's a store for tall jeans. It's an online store, but they are doing gangbusters in their business because they're just simply focusing on jeans for tall people. The examples could go on and on. Another reason to move beyond the fear of niching is that in order to create any real leverage in your private practice, you really must focus. Focusing allows us to stay sane, for one thing. None of us are very efficient when we're bouncing from one thing to the other. Many of the therapists I've worked with have told me that when they've been trying to master too many things in a general practice, they feel like they never know enough about any one issue to be really good. When you niche, you'll be able to avoid the overwhelm that this therapist feels. The third reason that you want to niche is that expert status will elude you if you don't. If you have cancer, you don't settle for a general practitioner. You go to an oncologist. If you have an ulcer that continues to plague you, you go to a gastrointestinal specialist. You find an expert. Everyone likes experts. We have much more faith in their ability to help us. And it's great to be an expert because you get to call your own shots. As an expert, you get to charge higher fees. It's also much easier to get referrals because you stand out in others' minds. Heck, you could even be interviewed by the media if there's an incident in your town having to do with your specialty. The last reason for moving beyond the fear of niching is that no one will listen to you unless you speak directly and specifically to them. And you can't speak specifically unless you niche. This is the biggest benefit of choosing a niche, in my opinion. You can't do therapy unless you have clients, and you can't get clients unless you can get them to listen to you. In our distracted society, the only way to reach clients is to speak to them very specifically about their problem. That's the only way that they'll slow down and pay attention to you. You'll earn credibility with them if you speak knowledgeably about what they're going through. They need to know that you get them before they'll listen. Once they feel really seen and heard by you, then they'll listen to you until the cows come home.